When you think of ancient Egypt, what comes to mind? Towering pyramids, golden sarcophagi, and pharaohs who ruled like gods on earth. But what if I told you that the most famous queen of Egypt, Cleopatra, lived closer in time to you and me than to the building of the Great Pyramids of Giza? That's right. When Cleopatra was born, those iconic monuments were already over 2,000 years old. To her, they weren't symbols of a vibrant, living culture. They were ancient ruins, relics of a past so distant it had become legend. And yet, standing in the shadow of that forgotten age, she would become one of the most powerful, intelligent, and controversial women in all of history. This isn't just a story of dusty tombs and hieroglyphs. This is a story of politics, passion, betrayal, and sheer unapologetic genius. Our story begins in 69 BC, with the birth of Cleopatra, Philippa. She was born into the Ptolemaic dynasty, a family of Greek rulers who had seized control of Egypt centuries earlier, following the death of Alexander the Great. Imagine that, for nearly 300 years, Egypt was ruled by foreigners who governed a nation whose gods and temples were ancient long before their own ancestors ever set foot on its soil. But by the time Cleopatra came of age, the world was changing. The once mighty Egyptian empire was a shadow of its former self. To the west, a new power was rising with terrifying speed. Rome. Kingdom after kingdom was falling, absorbed into the ever-expanding Roman machine. The throne of Egypt was a precarious prize, surrounded by spies, assassins, and endless family plots. To claim her birthright, Cleopatra had to outmaneuver not just foreign enemies, but her own siblings. In the court of the Ptolemies family wasn't a source of strength, it was the deadliest threat of all. Cleopatra was no ordinary royal. While her predecessors were content to rule from their Greek-style palaces, she did something revolutionary. She embraced Egypt. She was a scholar, educated in philosophy, mathematics, and politics, and she spoke at least 7 languages fluently. Most importantly, she was the first Ptolemaic ruler to learn the native Egyptian language. She understood that true power wasn't just won with armies or gold, it was won through connection, culture, and perception. When she was just 21 years old, she orchestrated one of the most audacious meetings in history. Smuggled into the palace hidden inside a rolled-up carpet, she appeared before Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in the Roman world. But she wasn't there to beg for help. She came to negotiate as an equal. She captivated him not with her beauty alone but with her sharp intellect, her political savvy, and her unwavering confidence. Their alliance wasn't just a romance, it was a masterstroke of political survival. With Caesar's legions at her back, she reclaimed her throne, stabilized Egypt's economy, restored its ancient temples, and began cementing her legacy not as a puppet queen, but as a true pharaoh. But in 44 BC, the world was thrown into chaos. Julius Caesar, the man who had seemed invincible, was assassinated on the floor of the Roman Senate. Suddenly, Cleopatra was alone again, her greatest ally gone, her kingdom once more vulnerable. Lesser rulers would have crumbled, but Cleopatra refused to surrender. She was a survivor. She knew the game of power, and she was ready to play another round. Soon, a new player emerged from the ashes of Rome's civil war, Mark Antony, Caesar's charismatic general, and one of the most powerful men left in the Republic. He and Cleopatra formed a new alliance, one that was both political and deeply personal. Together they ruled from the magnificent city of Alexandria, creating a court that blended the ancient splendor of Egypt with the military might of Rome. They weren't just partners, they were a power couple on a global scale, and this terrified the Roman Senate. Back in Rome, they saw Cleopatra as a dangerous foreign sorceress, a temptress who could bend Rome's greatest heroes to her will. They whispered that she planned to move the capital of the empire to Alexandria. They feared her influence, her ambition, her intellect, and perhaps they were right to be afraid. She wasn't just a client queen, she was a contender. Together, Antony and Cleopatra had 3 children, carving out an empire of their own in the East. They dreamed of a new world order, a dynasty that would unite Rome and Egypt. But back in Rome, power was consolidating around one man, Octavian, Caesar's adopted son and heir. Octavian saw Antony and Cleopatra not as partners, but as a direct threat to his own ambition. He painted them as traitors to Rome and declared war. The final confrontation came in 31 BC, at the Battle of Actium. It was one of the largest naval battles of the ancient world, a clash of empires that would decide the fate of the Mediterranean. It ended in disaster. Their fleet was shattered, their armies defeated. Antony and Cleopatra retreated to Egypt, their dream of a shared empire in ruins. The end was near. Soon after, Octavian's legions invaded Egypt. The final act of the tragedy began. Hearing a false report that Cleopatra was dead, a heartbroken Mark Antony took his own life. Cleopatra, now truly alone, was captured. Octavian planned to parade her through the streets of Rome in his victory triumph, a final, public humiliation for the queen who had dared to challenge him. But Cleopatra would not give him the satisfaction. She refused to be a trophy. In her final act of defiance, she chose the manner of her own death, a decision that would cement her legend for all time. Legend tells us she died by the bite of an asp, a venomous snake smuggled to her in a basket of figs, a death worthy of an Egyptian queen. Other accounts suggest she drank a fast-acting poison. The truth is, we will never know for certain. But what is certain is that with her death, the 3,000-year-old line of the pharaohs came to a final, dramatic end. Egypt became just another province of the Roman Empire. For centuries, Roman propaganda defined her legacy. She was painted as a decadent seductress, a manipulative foreigner who destroyed great Roman men. But modern historians are rewriting that story. They see her as she truly was, a brilliant scholar, a cunning strategist, a skilled diplomat, and a ruler who used every tool at her disposal, her intellect, her charm, her culture, her body to protect her kingdom and her people from being swallowed by the most powerful empire on earth. Cleopatra didn't just live in the shadow of the pyramids, she lived in the shadow of time itself, a woman caught between a legendary past and an uncertain future. And yet, she found a way to bend history to her will. So the next time you think of ancient Egypt, remember this: the pyramids may be monuments to eternity, but it was Cleopatra's mind, not her crown, that truly conquered history. If you love hearing real stories from the past that sound almost too incredible to be true, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. History is full of secrets and we're just getting started. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.